The International Court of Justice delivered a groundbreaking advisory that could make the world's polluters pay for the damage that they cause to the small nations most vulnerable to climate change.
Having particular regard to the Charter of the United Nations, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Paris Agreement, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the duty of due diligence, the rights recognized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the principle of prevention of significant harm to the environment, and the duty to protect and preserve the marine environment. A. What are the obligations of states under international law to ensure the protection of the climate system and other parts of the environment from anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases for states and for present and future generations?
In an exclusive interview with Choice News, former Sustainable Development Minister Dr. James Fletcher helped to put this ruling into perspective.
What we had yesterday was a ruling by the International Court of Justice on an advisory position that had been referred to it by the United Nations, and that is a result of a request by Vanuatu, started by Vanuatu, and I think another 131 countries or 132 countries joined Vanuatu in sponsoring this resolution to the United Nations, really to clarify what are the responsibilities of countries with respect to climate change. You know, for us small island developing states, of which Vanuatu is one, we are suffering the effects of climate change and we haven't contributed to those effects. And the countries that are responsible for climate change, the countries that have historically emitted greenhouse gases and still continue to this day to emit greenhouse gases, what responsibility do they have to do something about it?
There have been several international agreements meant to promote climate action. However, Dr. Fletcher says that this ruling offers legal recourse to the small island developing states, SIDS, and other nations and communities who experience the worst impacts of climate change, despite having hardly contributed to global greenhouse gas emissions. Some of the key features of the ruling, he says, are to outline legally binding responsibilities and obligations, especially to high emitters who belong to the developed world. The ruling reaffirms the uniquely vulnerable case of small island developing states. It also gives legal responsibility to regulate and limit both public and private emissions. And lastly, it ensures a level of intergenerational equity.
It's very important for us as small island developing states because it has become increasingly under pressure within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the special vulnerability and the special circumstances of small island developing states. You know, we have always said, and both treaties, both the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, they both affirm that small island developing states are special, they're uniquely vulnerable. This advisory opinion confirmed that small island developing states are uniquely vulnerable and there are special circumstances because of things like sea level rise, biodiversity loss, etc. It also spoke to the need for high emitters, the countries that are high emitters, to regulate not just the public emissions of greenhouse gases, so the emissions over which as a state you have control, but even private emissions. So the companies that operate within your jurisdiction, you can say, well, this is company X or Acme company and I have no control over them. If they're operating within your jurisdiction, then you have a right and you have a responsibility to regulate the greenhouse gases.
There will be more on this revolutionary ICJ ruling and its implications for St. Lucia and the Caribbean in subsequent reports. For Choice News Now, I am Sienna Dalso.